On this episode of Hashtag General, we discuss Apple's upcoming It's Showtime event, Captain Marvel, and Halo's coming to PC. This is Hashtag General. Welcome to Hashtag General. I am Logan Studley, and of course, always joining me is Chris. He put the kid in Kid Liquid, Chris Akamura. I don't know what I was doing with that.
That was
bad. That was bad.
Yeah.
That was bad. Yeah, I had a better intro, pre-prepped, and totally just didn't use it.
Pedophilia is not a joke, people. That's not okay.
No, the better intro was our binary power is we just become bigger nerds. But
that's awesome.
Yeah, like I should have remembered that's what I was gonna say.
Right. So what's with you?
Not much. It's been, just a normal 2 weeks for me. So
right.
Yeah, nothing really big to dive into unless you want to just...
Yeah, you want to just dive in.
Yeah, let's just dive in. So, James, let's just go right into tech. We were texting about this.
Yeah.
If you aren't aware and aren't a big, giant Apple nerd, Apple has a big event coming up next week, or not next week, on Tuesday, where it is... it's expected to be they're announcing their multitude of streaming services.
Yeah.
But... usually, whenever they do an event like this, there's going to be the hardware updates are part of the
big announcement.
Right. But this week prior, all the hardware stuff got released by press release.
Right, which is weird because you wake up in the morning. So Apple usually does about 2 events for sure, maybe a third if they have a lot going on that year. Of these kind of events, right, at the Apple compound, and they'll go through the whole thing. But this one's a bit weird because I wake up in the morning and it's like, hey, new iPads are here.
I know. It was like, if you would have asked me literally last Sunday, are you excited for the upcoming Apple event? Because I've been watching the keynote since I was 14 because nerd. But I would have been like, you know what? I'm excited for the new iPads. I'll see what they announce. But I'm like, whatever. Right. I'm only in it for the iPads. Wake up Monday morning and they announce new iPads. It immediately goes from... oh, I'm not interested, to being like, what are they announcing next week?
Right, and then they announced the other day new AirPods.
New AirPods, and then spec updates for the iMac. And I remember my text message to you was, this is like a keynote's worth of material, and it's only Wednesday. Admittedly, they didn't announce anything new Thursday or Friday.
Right.
But... they could have had that been the March event and everyone would have been okay. So immediately to me it became what is Apple announcing? Because they're really good about keeping their keynotes to 90 minutes to 2 hours. That must mean that they think that this event that they're doing Tuesday, whatever they're showing off, is worth that time.
Right. So I have two conclusions. I have one that is there's a lot of streaming services and maybe something to rival what Google just announced. Yeah. In sort of a gaming market sense. I mean, I know there's a rumor of an iOS subscription service.
Yeah, so let's, real quick, to give you the rundown of all the rumored subscription services. Sure. There is the always talked about, because anyone, if you're in entertainment, Apple's been buying stuff left and right, and that's stuff that gets released by Variety and Hollywood Reporter. So as much as there's no service, Apple streaming service is expected to be announced. Last year, Apple bought a company called Texture that does magazine subscriptions. So that's expected to be rolled out on Tuesday. There's also been a rumored of a gaming subscription service, which I have some thoughts on, which we'll go into. But those are the three things that we know of that we were expecting on Tuesday.
Right. And the gaming one, we actually do have quite a bit of information about in terms of pricing model and what they're doing. You can go look it up. I'm not going to talk about it too much here. But it's interesting to see, it's either they have so much going on that they need to get the hardware stuff out of the way, but they're not... Apple's not dumb. They know that most people come to these keynotes or watch these keynotes for the hardware. Yeah. And so... there's only one logical conclusion, Mr. Studley.
And what do you think it is?
The Apple car.
The Apple car? I don't think it's happening.
But really, there has to be something big. And I would assume that it's going to be something new that we haven't seen before. This
is my personal thought on this. First off, there was something I only started seeing last week was rumors of an Apple TV update.
Right.
And one of the rumors that have been going on with Apple TV has been Apple is expected to release, like how Chromecast and Amazon with their Fire and Roku have started to do, just like the HDMI stick,
right,
where it only can do streaming video. There's a rumor that Apple's going to release something like that in addition to their set-top box, because those set-top boxes they have are pretty damn powerful, more powerful than you need if all it's going to be doing is streaming video.
Right.
I don't think that is their big thing.
No, they can't be.
But what I'm wondering is there's been some talk inside some of the Apple tech community of what if Apple's big announcement isn't they pull like with the iPhone when Steve Jobs introduced it, he's like, we're bringing a breakthrough internet communicator,
right,
a widescreen iPod, and it's like, oh no, actually it's one device that does all three. I'm starting to wonder if this rumored Apple Prime, that's what some people have been referring to it, is what if all the subscription services, Apple Music, Apple's TV, whatever it gets called, Apple's gaming subscription, right, Apple's magazine subscription, what if they are just bundling them all into one subscription service?
Okay, I could see that.
And I'm like, that might actually get my attention more than we've not released 4 new subscriptions. It's, oh wait, I can spend $10, $20, and I get all of that. That puts them on, that makes them bigger than just your Netflix subscription.
Right.
So I think that might be part of the play that's going on there.
I think so as well. My thing is, again, if it is 90 minutes to 2 hours,
what all are they showing?
Because they can't just talk about a subscription service for an hour and a half. They don't do that.
Yeah.
That's not their shtick. So there has to be some kind of hardware here or some kind of big one more thing surprise.
Yeah.
Unless they're changing things up, which I highly doubt, because it's been years and of the same format.
The big thing is Apple likes press attention, and they are masters at getting the attention they want. There's right, no reason, like the reason you release AirPods, which are their most popular device out right now, mm-hmm, the only reason you release updates over press release is whatever you have in the bag is so big that you don't want, hey, we updated your AirPods to overshadow it to where the AirPods, the iPads, all that got press coverage this week.
Right.
The reason why I'm not thinking Apple Car or any hardware is if you look at Apple's leaks over the past few years.
Oh, it always leaks.
It always leaks, but it's all on hardware side.
Right.
Internal Apple has clamped down to where all the leaks we've had in the past few years that have come from internal Apple have been someone posting stuff to get the website ready and a bunch of people typing in just like oddly specific
right,
URL codes that they basically have learned like the methodology that Apple's web dev team uses,
right,
to where they're like, we think this application is going to be called XYZ, and they usually use this when they're creating a temporary, like, right, to where basically people have found the temporary landing page and downloaded a bunch of the media and then leaked that. So it isn't that someone has the leaks from inside as much as people have found all the information, right, and we haven't had that yet this year.
Right. And to me, that screams something big and internal.
Yeah.
Right? So when you think about an iPad or an iPod or an iPhone, when you think about leaks the last couple of years, it's all the manufacturing in China. Mm-hmm. Whereas if it is an Apple Car or if it is something like an Apple gaming system, right? If it's something like that, I don't think that's coming out right away. I don't think that's coming out soon. And I think that is still something that could be internally developed.
Something that's internal and wouldn't have leaked.
Right, and wouldn't have leaked. And so that's what I'm leaning towards of, again, I'm not saying Apple Car particularly. That's more of a joke. And then like Apple gaming system, little less of a joke, but like still a joke of, it's something in that vein of like, this is something new. It's something very, not maybe far away, but a decent amount of way where it hasn't hit manufacturing yet.
Yeah. I think when it comes to this event, Apple has talked already on the record that services like streaming, like right, Apple Music, are going to become a bigger thing for Apple going right, forward.
Which is smart.
It's not that they necessarily need to diversify as much as they've hit peak iPhone in terms of there's not much growth left there, which isn't a problem. They're still going to make billions of dollars a year.
But every at this point, every hardware refresh on an iPhone or iPad gives you diminishing returns.
Yeah, so they need to find new ways for growth, and it's going to be services. And I think that means this is going to be mostly streaming focused or services focused. In terms of gaming in particular, one of the reasons I'm intrigued is, I don't know if we've done it on the show, but my little Apple doesn't understand gaming rant.
I think we did once.
But basically, the TLDR is when Nintendo announced the Switch, my whole thing was, this is proof that Apple totally missed the boat, because all a Switch is an underpowered iPad with controls.
Right.
And if Apple had actually focused on gaming and made it to where you could have things interact with the iPad but not require a touch control interface, but can instead require physical controls, they could have owned the mobile gaming market in a way they haven't.
Right.
I don't know if Apple's to that point yet, but some of the rumors of their subscription service, like it isn't going to be freemium games, it's going to all be games that were created that you could buy individually.
Right.
Maybe Apple is starting to figure out that they've been doing gaming wrong. I still think that if they actually believe that they are a gaming platform, they need to become a publisher or invest more money in that regard, because a lot of first-party content is what helps separate individual systems.
Sure.
And there needs to be more effort on that, I think, on Apple's part. But they like showing off and saying they have console-level specs, but they aren't willing to put console-level focus in their gaming development.
Sure, and I would agree with that. I think that the mobile space is something that's so interesting as a gaming console ecosystem. It's so saturated, and the open development cycle that iOS and Android have, or the mobile space in general has, makes it so that there's a lot of low quality stuff on there that obviously they'd have to curate, but because of how both Google Play Store and the App Store work in terms of developer freedom, it really makes it impossible to curate that.
Yeah.
So if they did get into the gaming space in a meaningful way, they would have to completely redo their philosophy or their outlook on the App Store.
Yeah, they would.
And I don't think that that's something that they're willing to do or something they need to do. I think that mobile is such a different space to the console one, that if Apple was going to get into the console or the gaming market, they would need to launch their own, like, games would have to become separate from the App Store.
Yeah.
Or they would have to launch a new device or a new console.
Well, I don't think they necessarily need to launch a new device per se. Update the chip in the Apple TV, give it a bit more storage space, and bundle it with a controller, and you actually have a pretty decent.
Right, but I mean, even then, it's a different device than like just putting a gaming subscription service on your iPad.
And that's my concern, is if all they're doing is we have a new gaming subscription and that's it, then Apple's
that's what it is.
Yeah.
So from what the information we have now, basically what it is, again, you can go look up more details, but the TLDR of it is the not freemium games and not games with microtransactions, but like the full purchase games that you buy. So something like Roller Coaster Tycoon Classic, which is like $5 on iOS.
Knights of the Old Republic, which is $10.
Which is $10.
It is probably
when BioShock was still being actively developed and updated for the iOS, that's another $15 game. So all of these games under the subscription service would become free for you to go ahead and use while you're on the service. Think of it like Xbox Game Pass, but for Apple iOS games that are sort of full purchases. And
something like that, if it leads to people playing more of those style of games, I can see there being better game development in iOS.
Right.
So it's one of those things where I think Apple does need to up its hardware game, but this is definitely a step in the right direction in terms of upping their development game.
Right.
It just depends on how it plays out.
Less of a development thing, and again, like you said, more of a publishing thing of being able to curate correctly.
Yeah.
But again, the curation is the major issue that I have with Apple's. approach to gaming.
Like it's
not the more the merrier.
Yeah, because I know I'm super hesitant when it comes to games on my phone and my iPad. Admittedly, we'll talk about my iPad in a second, but I
download everything, and like if it remotely interests me, I'll download it and give it a try. Which is why I have like such an aversion to this.
Yeah,
like I play a lot of garbage.
Yeah, no, it's more of a. I don't want to say I got burned out by garbage, but it's just there's so many low effort games out there that Apple's current ecosystem made it hard to find the good, high quality games in a meaningful way without having to be overly dependent on. There's services out there like Touch Arcade where they do pretty good reviews of iOS games, but the curation on Apple's end has been lacking.
Right.
So hopefully this shows a change. So Tuesday, I am more interested because all the hardware got announced, because Apple, whatever it is, Apple thinks it's awesome.
Right, and I don't know what it is. Yeah. Which is like again, I would have not been too excited just because okay, new iPads, new AirPods, like I know what to expect. Now I don't. So
yeah, and the fact that I don't know what to expect, it makes it that much more interesting to speculate, because we've just done some speculating, but it's all with the caveat of we might be wrong, because if they had not released the hardware, we would have probably just taken it as a standard Apple event.
Right.
So that makes it interesting. But like I said, my thing with the iPad, to go back to their Monday announcement, is, I know you know this, and I think we've talked about this. This is a lovely iPad 2, as in my iPad is 8 years old. I've been in the market for an upgrade, and it's nice, first off, to wake up and be like, hey, new iPads. But one of the things I do like, it has been, for the past, I want to say, year or two, when it comes to entry-level iPad versus iPad Pro, you had a huge jump in terms of price and quality.
Right.
To where it would be kind of like, well, I could get away with a regular iPad, but I like all these nicer things. It's just the iPad Pro is crazy expensive.
Right.
It's nice that they have finally put out a mid-level product, to where it has a lot of these nice whiz-bang features. So now my dilemma is, crap, do I want the iPad Air or do I want the iPad Pro?
So funny enough, I have the same dilemma, because I know you're looking for an iPad. I have an iPad mini, and I prefer the form factor of an iPad mini.
Yeah, and they released new iPad minis.
Which is amazing to me. I thought they were killing that line. I was almost 100% convinced they were going to kill the iPad mini. No, new iPad mini. I was going to get an iPad Pro probably next year or sort of maybe down the line later this year.
But that new mini
is pretty sweet. And the main reason I wanted there's two reasons why I wanted the iPad Pro. One, the increased power and Apple Pencil support.
Yeah.
Which, spoilers, iPad mini now has all of those.
Yeah.
And I love the bezel-less screen. With the reduced bezels with the iPad Pro. I'm very sad the iPad mini does not have those reduced bezels.
What's interesting, though, is both the iPad Air kept the iPad Pro 10.5 specs in terms of design, and the iPad mini kept the old iPad mini specs.
Right.
As much as everyone's like, oh man, they could have done more on that design. First off, that's probably going to be a future refresh. But the nice thing is that means...
Maybe they announced it Tuesday.
If any old case like you have for your current iPad mini will work with the new one. Right. And since a lot of people, the iPad mini has been for either their kids or for their business, not having to invest in a whole bunch of new cases or accessories is a plus.
Right.
So it's
understandable.
Yeah.
But again, for me, it's just a thing of it's slightly irritating. But whatever. It's fine. What are you leaning towards?
I'm honestly, my first thing is with the iPad Air, I wish the one design change, it's not the bezel that bothers me, it's the pencil. Because the new Apple Pencils that work with the iPad Pro, they connect magnetically and charge magnetically,
it's so cool.
Which is so cool. But the iPad Air uses the old Apple Pencil, which charges by plugging it into the Lightning port, which is just like the iPad Lollipop design is kind of awkward and clunky. And from my understanding, I need to play around with more. The feel of the new Apple Pencil is nicer. So it's kind of like I'm kind of leaning to the iPad Air, but I want to look at like the screen difference because it doesn't have the ProMotion, and I do some videos. I want to do some not only watching video. I'm tempted by things like it's LumaFusion for video editing. Like I wouldn't mind trying something like that out. And I know there's stuff I want to do where I can take advantage of the iPad Pro. So it's like, either way, I think the device will work for me. I just want to stare at them for 10 minutes and be like, yes, this is what I'm getting. But saving a couple $100 on the iPad Air might just be the thing that wins in that regard.
Right.
So, who knows? Soon. Soon I'll have one or the other, and I'll be happy with it.
That's exciting, though.
But yeah, no, it's a much overdue refresh to my tech. I can finally get rid of this clunky 30-pin connector. But yeah, that's something down the road for me. But any more Apple stuff or tech stuff or?
No. But speaking of games, you can go ahead and follow my Twitter @KidLiquid, and I talk about Marvel Strike Force about every day because I love that game and I play that game all the time. So go ahead and follow me if you play Marvel Strike Force and you want to discuss Marvel Strike Force with me. Go ahead.
Well, speaking of games, James, let's switch to games. This was big news for me the moment it broke. I don't know if you texted me or I texted you. All I remember was lots of exclamation marks.
Yeah.
Halo is finally coming to PC in all of its glory. So the Halo Master Chief Collection, they announced not this past week, but the week prior, is being ported to PC. That means Halos 1, 2, 3, Halo Reach, and I think Halo 4.
And ODST as well.
And ODST. So I don't think I think it's only Halo 5. This is going to be the console exclusive anymore.
Right.
They're going to be rolling it out over time. We are going to stream it. I don't know how yet. I don't know exactly the fundamental. Like, I just know it will happen.
Right.
Because I like Halo. I miss playing Halo. I have an old 360, and every once in a while, I'm just like, man, I want to play Halo.
Right.
But having it on PC it makes me very happy.
So, I know you're super excited. I'm super excited too. It's going to look beautiful on PC when I can mess with the frame rates and graphic settings and make that thing look gorgeous.
So I'm probably totally going to play Halo Anniversary in its old school graphics.
Oh, you have
greatness.
to. You have to. But to me, the interesting thing is what this means for Microsoft and their game studios going forward. So for people that don't know, Xbox Game Pass has been sort of Microsoft's subscription service for their games. And the main point is that they have been pretty stingy with their sort of game studios and their first party games and like kind of where they go. So obviously they have stake in the PC market as well. So it makes sense for them to bring games like Sea of Thieves and Forza and things like that over to PC as well.
In fact, Sea of Thieves has
crossplay, yeah. So the thing that's interesting here is sort of their big mascot, quote unquote, mascot games, Halo, Gears of War, things like that have been sort of tied to the Xbox. Like those haven't gone anywhere.
Yeah, because that helps drive sell of the platform.
Right. And so them opening up the doors here open the doors for Halo and Gears of War, which gives credence to the rumor. And I don't know how much you know about this. So Cuphead was a Microsoft exclusive because Microsoft Studios helped fund that game and get that game on even made. So Cuphead is an extremely difficult but wonderfully made 2D side scroller.
The animation work on that is amazing.
Right. It is the most beautiful game I've seen in a long, long time. And so, yes, it definitely and so they're bringing that game to the Switch. That they announced that I think earlier last week or earlier this week actually, and it's coming out in April. Then the other rumor was that Ori and the Blind Forest, which is another game of the similar vein where it only got made because Microsoft funded it, is also coming to Switch. So that's another rumor that's happening as well. And both of those games are getting Xbox Live support.
Well, the thing we've also been hearing recently is Xbox Live support they're going to enable developers to include it in their game regardless of platform.
Right. So
I think the only exception is PlayStation.
Well, PlayStation,
but I think that's Sony.
They don't want to play nice. That's like Xbox says, like, yes, you can use it, and Sony's just like, no.
Yeah, that's a Sony thing, not a Microsoft thing.
Right. And so the interesting thing here is, I know, like, I'm going 4D chess, like going deep in here. There's been a lot of industry rumors from a lot of credible people on Reset Era and a couple other sites where people are saying that there's a huge announcement coming down the pipeline, and it would be like Mario being on a PlayStation console.
Well, I think also the fact that we'll talk about Stadia here in a second.
Right.
But the reaction from the head of Microsoft Games in Xbox was basically like, "Oh, that's nice."
Yeah,
it's like, "Oh, Microsoft is working on something."
Well, the whole industry has. So Google's sort of the first one to come to market with it, and I think they rushed it out a little bit with Stadia. And we'll talk about a little bit about that in a second. But Nintendo's been, if you don't know, Nintendo's been testing a lot of streaming stuff with the Switch. In Japan, because Japan has the internet infrastructure to actually make it function properly. Yeah. So Resident Evil 4 has come to, or Resident Evil 5 has come to that console. Assassin's Creed has come to the Switch via streaming services. So, and they work perfectly fine in Japan. They don't work well here because
which we'll go into when we talk about Google.
And so it all comes down to internet infrastructure at that point for streaming platforms. But there is a lot of rumors and a lot of information to back up the idea of Halo Master Chief Collection eventually coming to Switch. That is something that is very much in play and could happen within the next year. And I would not be surprised if that happened, according to the rumors and the leaks that we've been getting so far and all the information that we have. And this sort of opened the door. Yeah.
Because, first off, there's been... The two strategies I've noticed from Microsoft is they're trying to increase parity between PC and console.
Right.
In the sense that they know that they control the PC market.
Right.
So as far as they're concerned, anything that helps the PC gaming market helps them.
Right.
And that looking at Steam, they look at Steam as an example of, hey, if we had been better suited here, we could be controlling that market further.
Sure.
So there's that. And then on top of it, there is the fact that there's a lot of, when you look at people who own the Switch, a lot of people who own a Switch either game on PC or game on Xbox or game on PlayStation. It isn't their only gaming device. So there's no reason to look at Nintendo as a console competitor the way you would with, say, PlayStation. You look at it as a console augment.
Right. And sort of getting back to the discussion that we had a couple weeks ago about Fortnite and how Sony was the one that sort of pushed back on Fortnite. At the same time, Microsoft and Nintendo were the ones playing nice and really
they had an ad
together and really forming a relationship and a bond. And it all comes down to Phil Spencer and sort of his approach to gaming, and that gaming's for everybody.
Yeah.
And gaming isn't a competition, and it is a business, but it isn't a fight to the finish. It is a marathon that they can all work together to help further one another.
Yeah, anything that enables the community to play together is good for the community as a whole.
Right. And so that's sort of been the Microsoft mantra for the past couple of years, which is why they, Microsoft owns Minecraft, if you didn't know. And so that...
I think Minecraft being on everything, I think, helped push this idea where they realized they didn't have to make stuff be exclusive to help the Xbox.
That said, all of their first-party studios that they've bought up in the past year and a half are fucking insane. And so the next Xbox is going to have some crazy exclusives.
Yeah.
Just saying. Just to throw that in there. They're going to have crazy exclusives, and there's a ton of crazy stuff happening within Microsoft internally.
Yeah, it's one of those things where the Xbox One launch is looking more and more just like a great, gigantic hiccup rather than like this big clusterfuck that everyone tried to describe it as.
With the way, I think, and I've said this before, I said this when it launched, and I I said this. I talked to you about it when it launched.
We even mentioned it on the show.
Right. Microsoft was ahead of the game with the Xbox One launch. The idea of having digital-only console, having your games locked to your console, things like that. That's all where the industry's heading.
They wanted to be the Steam for consoles, but they didn't say that, so everyone thought of it as just a big, gigantic DRM.
Right. But it wasn't. It was a play to this current era we're heading towards with streaming and with digital. So they were geniuses and ahead of their time.
Yeah.
Just a little too early, and they got fucked for it. And bad messaging. They had terrible messaging on it. They had
horrible messaging around it.
Right. But the idea behind it was correct.
Yes.
Okay.
So, yeah, I think Microsoft is kind of... I don't want to say they're throwing their weight around, but they're becoming, I say, the most interesting player to keep an eye on.
Right.
At the moment.
I mean, I think in the next generation, so when Scarlet comes out, whatever that console ends up being called, they're going to dominate the market. I'm calling that now. So
no, it's like even just their decisions in the past, because when the consoles first came out, everyone was like, the PlayStation 4 is the better console. I think now, just looking at how Microsoft has handled itself and the community, speaking as someone who doesn't have one of the current generation consoles, if I was to buy one, it's a Switch. But if I was to buy a second one, it's an Xbox.
Right.
It's just because of how it is. But let's move on to the big thing that everyone was talking about. Google, is it Stadia or Stadia? I didn't watch.
Heard both.
You've heard both?
I've heard both.
So why don't you give it a rundown, because you're going to be the one who understands this better than me.
Yeah, so Stadia is basically Google's idea for streaming service, or for streaming platform. So for anyone that isn't aware, basically what it is, and again, a lot of consoles are working on it. And so I know Sony's working on it. Sony has done it before with PlayStation Now, which was their service before. Xbox is working on one now that we've heard rumors about for years. Switch has done it in Japan. So Nintendo obviously has the tech to make it work. What it does is it basically means that the game is running on a server in somewhere else in the world, on some sort of big server bank. And then you are controlling that server via controller hooked up to your device, and then streaming whatever data onto the system itself.
The basic upsell on this is the idea that you'll be able to get full quality graphics at either 1080 or 4K over the internet. So there's a couple problems with this. The major one being the latency and internet problems. Well, there's latency. There's broadband in the United States is absolute garbage. Eat shit, Ajit Pai. You have to throw it out there whenever you talk about broadband.
Sure.
And the fact that there are parts of the country where dial-up is your only internet access.
Right. So obviously you're not going to be playing it on dial-up. And most forms of broadband won't be sufficient enough to hit 1080. So
yeah, I remember hearing like the download speeds you have to hit 1080, and I'm like, I think we have some pretty decent internet here at my apartment, and I think we don't have. It wasn't fast enough for 4K, but it was fast enough for 1080.
Right.
And we have fast internet.
Well, the interesting thing was when you see, even at the Google event, and I'm not sure what they were running on at the event, but when they're playing Assassin's Creed and he's hitting 4 buttons, let's go to the controller, and then the thing moves. Like, that's not...
Yeah.
That's not a good indication.
Yeah, people were talking about running into latency. They had done tests, apparently, where you could do a beta where you were playing, I think it was Assassin's Creed, the newest one, Odyssey. Yeah. And people who had played as part of that were like, yeah, it's actually not that bad, but occasionally it would be like you'd be playing along, be fine, and then all of a sudden it would drop to like 720p, and I'm like, hold on, you're trying to tell gamers, the most absurdly obsessed people when it comes to the quality of frame rates and graphics. By the way, you're only going to get 60 frames a second when everyone now is all about that 144 hertz. You can only get 60 frames a second, 1080p, and it's like, you guys realize that most PC gamers have already moved past that.
Right. And so, again, the interesting thing is that this is the future of where the gaming industry is headed. It just is. it has been kind of writing on the wall for the past like 4 or 5 years that this is it.
Well, it's the whole software as a service aspect of
Right.
computing right now, where you can still buy like Microsoft Office outright, but usually they're trying to push you onto a subscription.
Right.
Same with Adobe. You aren't necessarily buying a product for hundreds of dollars all at once.
Right.
You are buying a product for like $10 a month, because all these companies know overall they're going to make more money in the long run if you are paying on a monthly basis.
Right. And it also makes it a little better for the consumers if like there's 2 versions of an Xbox, one that has all the tech in it and then one that's just a streaming box that you pay monthly for or can turn off at any point in time, where it's like, hey, I'm not going to play that too much this month, like let me turn it off and then turn it back on when something else comes up that I want to play, right? So then it lowers your cost of entry, which cost of entry is probably the biggest hurdle for a lot of people.
It lowers cost of entry, but at the same time it lowers cost of hardware.
Right.
Because the big limiting factor isn't going to be the hardware you're playing on. The big limiting factor is going to be the speed of the person's internet.
Right.
And this is where, like, when I think Apple, I still don't like this decision and I hope they change it, but who knows with their upcoming gaming subscription that's rumored, when they blocked the Steam Link app.
Right.
Like, this could be the other thing of the future, is it might, as much as I expect there to be a next generation of consoles, I wonder if this will be the last generation of consoles.
I mean, there's always the rumor, like, we thought that the Xbox One, PS4 was going to be the last generation of consoles, right? It's obviously not. The PS5 and Microsoft have already announced the Project Scarlet stuff.
Yeah, we know they're working on it.
They're working on it. Those are coming. And again, like, I don't think console gaming will ever be dead. I think that right now, the way the internet works in the US, the console market can't be gone because internet infrastructure isn't.
It's great for when you're playing multiplayer, but it's not great if you're playing the game and multiplayer type thing.
Right. Well, even then, like, even multiplayer in a lot of ways, like, you get a lot of latency.
Yeah.
In a country like Japan, where it is smaller, it is tighter compact, where the infrastructure for internet is there, it's fine. It works great. I haven't heard any complaints about the Switch streaming stuff going on in Japan. And for the console like the Switch, where it is on the go, it works. The Switch was made for a country like Japan.
Yeah.
Obviously because it's Japanese, but like it was designed with Japanese infrastructure in mind. And when you bring that over,
people don't realize like how bad the internet is in the United States compared to the rest of the developed world.
Right.
We have really bad internet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, essentially that's what it is. So, I mean, am I excited for Google Stadia? Yes. Do I think it's going to do well? No. Do I think it's necessary? Yes. Do I think it's going to be widespread in a couple of years? No. But I think everyone's going to still give it a shot, and I think this is just the first drop in the bucket. But it's going to be a shitty drop in the bucket.
Yeah, it's one of those cases where maybe a decade from now, your Xbox is an app you open on your TV or your little set-top box like an Apple TV or your tablet.
Right. Not anytime soon.
But not anytime soon. And it's just a lot of what I think it was. I don't remember if it was Gizmodo or The Verge or Polygon. It was one of those three.
They're all the same.
Pretty much. They did a bit where their argument was that Stadia wasn't necessarily Google's big foray into gaming as they were trying to pitch it, as much as it was Google's effort to make sure that YouTube was relevant still in the gaming streaming space.
Sure.
Because they are losing out in competition to Twitch, where a lot of YouTube videos anymore in gaming are reposts of a Twitch stream.
Right.
I mean, they're still popular. It's still where most people go to watch it, but they don't have that market.
Mm-hmm.
So it's trying to make YouTube integral to that process more than making Google integral to gaming.
Sure.
Which I think is a fair argument. And also might be the reason why I saw this. I am not that, like, you know how far we've come when I'd rather have Microsoft be the big person in charge of all my gaming stuff than Google.
Sure.
It's like
Google just hasn't proven anything. And again,
Yeah.
it goes back to the same thing with Apple, where with the Google Play Store, they just have not done a good job.
yeah. To where like if Apple dropped this, I'd have the same response. Like that's great, but I need to see more of your development of the gaming community.
Sure.
The way Microsoft has done, where I know I'm in safe hands. Whereas Google, I feel like Google just wants to control everything so they can sell more advertising. But that's Google. Anything more on Stadia?
No, I mean, it was pretty straightforward, and a lot of people were like, wow. A lot of people that weren't in the gaming industry and weren't sort of paying attention were like, wow, this is really cool. Where it's like, yes, it's cool, but this is just the first, like,
People have been doing this for a while.
right? And this is nothing new, and it's nothing. It's a very shitty attempt at something that's kind of
This is
not new.
Google's NVIDIA. Is it Shield or Now that NVIDIA has?
Shield. It was the
And-
NVIDIA Shield, which is like a tablet device attached to a controller.
And then there's, well, I think
Which,
that
by the way,
NVIDIA
if you
has
go to
this-
Fry's, you can get it for like $50 now because no one bought any.
well, the Shield was the device, but there's, I think, also a streaming NVIDIA service. There was On Live, which went under because it couldn't keep up quality. It's just like, people have done this and have failed because of...
Well, they had PlayStation Now, which was like the most recent one, which used the same service as On Live. Sony ended up buying them and using that service for PlayStation Now. PlayStation Now allows you to download the games, so that went well.
yeah, like, it's...
You don't have to stream them anymore.
It isn't that you need a physical copy, but you need to have it downloaded to your device.
Yeah.
And until that
Or
barrier
you can
dro-
stream it if you want. If you want a headache, you can go ahead and do that.
Yeah,
but just download it.
just download it. All right, let's move on. James, it is time for some Star Wars.
Oh boy.
This one's actually gonna be relatively quick. Did you see basically it confirmed the rumor you said about the lightsaber
Oh
building.
yeah. Oh yeah.
So we now have it confirmed that it is
They are full metal.
Full metal.
It is a what they call a very immersive and personal experience. So they have a cast member. I don't know what they're calling cast members in Galaxy's Edge, but they have employees that will walk you through the whole process and will allow you and give you steps along the way. And it's a very ceremonial sort of...
The way I heard it is they wanted to take the whole buying a wand aspect
Right.
of...
Which is what we compared it to.
Yeah, the Universal theme park. Because that actually got brought up, and I think first off, the thing that caught me is the article that broke that, like the confirmation, was the OC register.
Yeah, which is weird.
Which was weird. I mean, OC, Anaheim, I get
Right.
it, but at the same time, this is just odd that they're the one that's breaking it. But they want basically the argument was Disney looked at how you buy a wand at the Universal theme parks and went, we could do it better.
Right.
They want it, so it's supposed to be this really cool experience. So you could still buy just like a generic
Right.
lightsaber
In the store, there's like the Mace Windu, the Anakin Skywalker, the Obi-Wan Kenobi.
But if you're willing to
lightsabers.
shell out, it sounds like a couple $100. You're
Right.
gonna go in and you're gonna have this experience building a lightsaber.
Right. And it's your decisions, it's your design choices. Obviously, there's preset things, but I mean it's pretty modular from what I'm hearing. And then you can go ahead and build your lightsaber out.
Yeah.
Which I'm super excited to do, just because again, I'm not a super big Harry Potter fan, so like even the wand ceremony thing is really cool and really sort of like, if my wife's Jenny's a huge Harry Potter fan, right? So for her, that's a huge and fun experience and something that is special for her. And so for me, this is the same sort of thing of, yes, this is something that I want. This is something that is personal to
Yeah.
me. And again, they said that it's going to only allow a couple of people or groups in at a time.
Yeah, that's the thing I'm finding. That's not just with the lightsaber. It seems like they're doing that also with like the Smuggler's Run with the Millennium Falcon.
Right.
They're being very specific at limiting the amount of people that can go into at any, not the total number of people who go in a day, but how many people can go in at a time to make sure that that experience is personal
special,
and it's
right.
special and.
Which is awesome.
Yeah.
And again, I've already gotten, I don't know if you have, I got an email from Disney saying, hey, if you're planning on coming during this time, like, please reserve Smugglers or your Galaxy's Edge dates.
Didn't get that email because I'm not on their parks email blast,
Right.
but I did see that they are basically telling anyone who has the annual pass, reserve your spot.
Yeah.
Because they are expecting the first 3 weeks to just be insane.
Right.
Which leads more to my plan of like October.
Right. And I will say too, if you're not a Disney fan, or if you didn't get that email and you want to go to Galaxy's Edge, how many people are going to be pissed off that they just head over to Disneyland on a whim to go to Galaxy's Edge and then get turned away because they don't have a reservation?
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of angry people, but at the same time, it's kind of what did you expect? Like, it's kind of like when that got announced, it seemed like everyone on the internet was just like, oh yeah, no duh.
Right.
But the people who didn't see the announcement are going to be like, what do you mean I had to reserve?
Yeah.
So if you're planning to go in June, reserve your spot.
Yeah, but that said, good job, Disney, because that's going to be a clusterfuck if you don't do that.
Oh.
Good job.
Speaking of Disney, James, let's switch it up to movies. That was real quick with Star Wars.
Yeah, I mean, we had to throw one in there.
We had to throw that one in there.
Yeah.
Because the moment I saw that news, I was just like, oh, Chris is right. And this is perfect.
Super giddy.
And not only was Chris is right, this is perfect, I was immediately like, and increase my savings budget for Star Wars.
You got to do it. You got to do it.
So, speaking of Disney, the merger with Fox is complete.
Yeah.
Disney now owns 20th Century Fox.
It's exciting.
And a bunch of assorted stuff. It's kind of weird. You could tell there's two, because I'm in both communities, there's like two different variances of coverage. Inside the industry, everyone is kind of freaking out.
Yeah.
Because it's anticipated, like, people are still...
A lot of layoffs.
The estimate is going to be between 4,000 and 10,000 people are going to be laid off. People already started getting laid off, I think, starting Thursday.
Yeah.
Variety had an article where they basically said if you went to any restaurant at this... So if you're not in LA, the Fox lot is right next to a mall in Century City. All the restaurants apparently at the Century City Mall on Thursday were basically... I just got laid off parties for various Fox people.
Right.
Because they'd go in to work, get laid off, and be like, well, I'm going to go get a drink.
Yeah.
And so apparently it was packed in the mall, filled with various people from the Fox lot just drinking away their layoff and pink slip. So I think that has to be said. That this is, from an industry perspective, losing an independent studio is not a good thing in terms of it's one less buyer, it's one less job opportunity, it's one less place to go and get work. So I'm not happy as someone who works within the industry on a regular basis. I am not happy that there's one less player or it's brought in to another company. I'd rather it be Disney than, say, Comcast or any of the other ones that are gobbling up studios.
So, like, people are getting on Disney for doing all these layoffs. It's just kind of necessary when you have a huge takeover like this.
Well, there's a lot of redundancies that don't need to exist.
Right, and so it's just sort of something that's necessary. I'm telling you now, if it was a company like Comcast or something, a company that was a little more bottom line driven, that these would be a lot worse.
Yeah.
So Disney's not necessarily the bad guy here. It's just sort of the nature of the business.
Fox was going to be bought.
Right.
And I think that's something that a lot of people have been trying to ignore, is that there was only two independent media companies really anymore, and that was Fox and Disney.
Right.
And Disney bought Fox. If Disney didn't buy Fox, it was going to be, look at how AT&T and Verizon and everyone have been, all these other companies have been buying the studios up left and right. There's a part of me that, while upset that this happened, at the same time, I'm glad it's the media company that bought them.
Right. And again, if Fox was going to go under either way, so if Disney didn't buy them...
The Murdochs were selling.
Right. The thing about it this way is don't think of it as how many jobs Disney's getting rid of. Think about how many they're saving by buying Fox.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
And then, so that's kind of like been the industry coverage. Has been like, woe is me, what's going on? The geek coverage has been MCU controls.
Right.
Fantastic Four.
And
I think also the thing that I'm really excited about is this means that all of the Star Wars rights, with the exception of broadcast on TBS.
Yes.
All of the Star Wars rights are now under one roof, which is good because this means that instead of having to jump through hurdles to do a re-release of, say, the original trilogy to theaters, those hurdles have just gone away. So my fingers are crossed that we actually get a full-blown non-marathon, but like an actual re-release to theaters of the original trilogy. But the other big thing, of course, is all of the X-Men and Fantastic Four and all that are
that's like all anyone cares about because of how big the MCU is, right?
Yeah.
Like all the Endgame sort of hype hitting up. Marvel and Disney could not have timed it better to where, hey, the next thing coming out next month is the biggest movie they've put out so far. And hey, here are all these characters that could possibly join next, right? Like, it couldn't have worked out better. The thing that I do have to preface that a lot of people aren't realizing is we're not going to see these characters for a long time.
No.
A very long time.
Earliest I would expect to see any of them is 5 to 6 years.
Right. And so I know that's a lot of like surprise to a lot of people because it's like, why wouldn't you just use your big characters? Deadpool's the only one that's going to survive in its current incarnation. Bob Iger's already said that, yes, Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool will continue.
It's also the only one of the Fox tentpoles that could switch into MCU.
Because of the way Deadpool works.
Exactly.
Like, so the interesting thing is that when the deal happened, almost right away, the Disney header was changed on their website to include Deadpool. So it now includes Deadpool, Iron Man, like Mickey Mouse, and like all this. Like Deadpool has become a part of that like Disney branding, which is great. I think Disney as a company needed sort of that edgy, mature kind of thing.
They need I think one of the things I've heard, and I also think might be the case, is there is a spot for R-rated superhero films that Deadpool proved.
Right.
And I think what might end up happening is if there are any MCU films that go harder for an R rating, which won't be many.
Right.
Because I know they like what they're doing and they don't intend to change it, that those films might be released under the Fox banner.
Sure.
Just as a
Makes
way
sense.
to easily differentiate between these are the MCU films that you can take your kid to, and these are the MCU films where you want to leave the kids at home.
Right.
Even though the kids will sneak in anyway.
Totally agree. And it's smart. It's like how they use Touchstone in the past, right? So it's there's a precedent for it. The interesting thing though is that, again, for MCU we have Guardians 3 coming out, we have Doctor Strange 2, we have Black Panther 2, we have the Black Widow film, we have Eternals, we have Shang-Chi, which has finally gotten a director. I forgot who they cast.
But that's taking us through, I think, 2021 or 2022.
Right. But like, look at all these films that's 6 films that we know about by name.
And a lot of people don't realize like how much Marvel had to fast track Spider-Man.
Yeah. So again, like Far From Home is still coming out. That's 7 films upcoming that we know by name that are in development or post-production or even pre-production. Like those are films that we know are happening. That's 6 films. That's at least 2 years of film.
Yeah.
Right? Then you think of, okay, they probably had plans before all of this happened. Do they quickly adjust like they did with Spider-Man to include Fantastic Four or X-Men?
And the thing is are these properties big enough to do that rush? And I think that's actually a fair question right now because Fox kind of ran them into the ground.
Right. And I think X-Men has a lot more leg room than Fantastic Four at this point.
Yeah.
But I would argue that Fantastic Four is more important and integral to making the MCU work
I think
properly.
Fantastic Four is going to be first.
Right. Because if you're not a comic book person, Fantastic Four is the first family of Marvel. That was Stan Lee's first creation in sort of what we know as the modern age of Marvel Comics. And so a lot of the Marvel Universe infrastructure, including the Avengers, including all of the stuff that we have now in the films, was built on with the fundamental idea that the Fantastic Four are around. So the Fantastic Four kind of cross-pollinated all of this stuff. Like Black Panther's first appearance was in a Fantastic Four comic. So Fantastic Four is way more important to the Marvel Universe, where the X-Men have sort of been on their own thing and telling their own stories.
Yeah.
The Fantastic Four have been the ones to sort of cross-pollinate between all the characters. So really important that they're still around.
So...
And I'm sure Feige's like chomping at the bit to get them in there.
Oh, I'm sure he already has a plan. It's like we're speculating. He already has a plan figured out. You know, the moment that happened, he was like, okay, so we're going to do this, that.
Oh, no. See, I guarantee you, Bob Iger walked into Kevin Feige's office. Kevin Feige does not walk into Bob Iger's office, okay? Bob Iger walks into Kevin Feige's office and goes, hey, Kevin, we got you this. And he goes, I got it. And he goes to the bottom half of his file cabinet, scrolls to the back, and pulls out a thing, and he goes, and he drops it on the table, and Bob Iger goes, what's that? And Kevin Feige goes, Plan B.
Okay. But I like that Kevin Feige doesn't go to Bob Iger.
No, Bob Iger goes to Kevin Feige.
Kevin Feige does not simply walk into Bob Iger's office.
No.
But last bit of, well, not last bit, another tidbit of MCU news that made me wish I was a fly on the wall at the Warner Brothers lot. James Gunn is returning to Guardians of the Galaxy 3.
But he's filming Suicide Squad first. So, like, my thing was, it could go one of two ways. One, it goes amazing, and then Warner Brothers goes, shit. How do we follow that? Right? Or, and the funnier one to me, is James Gunn just fucking rushes this thing out. So he can go back to Guardians where he belongs.
All I know is I'm sure at the Warner Brothers offices, someone was cursing up a storm the moment the news broke.
Yeah, and honestly, I was surprised that he's still going to do Suicide Squad.
Well, the thing that gets me is apparently the conversations between him and Alan Horn, who's the head of Disney, who's the person who initially fired James Gunn. Apparently Kevin Feige and I think even Bob Iger were like, hey, we should give him a shot. And so he had a series of meetings with James Gunn, and they knew months before this announcement he was going to be coming back, which means at some level James Gunn was talking to Alan Horn and Warner Brothers at the same time, and he accepted the job knowing that he was probably going to be coming back to Guardians of the Galaxy 3. Meanwhile, I have a feeling Warner Brothers had no idea, so they're sitting there thinking, shit, we got the golden goose. And then it's like, oh wait, no, we're just only temporarily have the golden goose.
Well, and my thing with Warner Brothers is you kind of have to understand, is it best for them for him to do Suicide Squad 2? Or is it best for them to sort of just move on and say, hey, go do your film that you really want to do.
Yeah.
And we'll get someone that wants to be here.
I know. I wonder how this is going to play out.
Right. I wouldn't be surprised if they just sort of part ways amicably and then Gunn can go back to developing Guardians 3.
Well, apparently he already had the script written. So
it's already ready. Well, remember, they were supposed to start filming like this month.
Yeah.
Before all this stuff happened. They were supposed to start filming. So, I mean, it's ready. Everything's ready to go. It's just a matter of can they get Gunn in the door, which, again, if they just part ways with Suicide Squad 2, they can ramp all that back up again and be ready to go in 2 months.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how that one plays out.
Yeah.
But moving on, you have finally seen Captain Marvel.
I did.
You wrote a wonderful little review on Facebook. So why don't we actually go into your Captain Marvel impressions?
So, and I put this in the review too. I don't write a lot of reviews often because I don't feel strongly like I need to a lot of the times. I did it for Last Jedi, and I did it for... I think Last Jedi was the last one that I did it for that I felt strongly about. And Captain Marvel is this other one because I've seen so much sort of discussion about it. And you're either on one side or the other. Usually either you think it's pretty mediocre as a Marvel film or you think it's fantastic, right? And again, I'm somewhat biased. I have a Captain Marvel shirt on. Like I'm a little biased because I love that character so much. And it is the Carol Danvers film that I wanted, which is how I started the review, right? It is so much of what made those comics great. It's what makes that character great. And the thing that I love about it is that it gets back to what MCU solo films did so well, right? So before this, my favorite ones, sort of like the introductory solo movie, were the original Iron Man and the original Captain America.
Yeah.
And it goes to the idea of you spend a lot of time with that character, just getting to know that character, right? We spend a lot of time with Tony before the suit is made. Like half the movie, he doesn't have that full Iron Man suit.
Meanwhile, with both Black Panther and Spider-Man, they basically appear fully formed.
Right. Same thing with Captain America. You spend half the movie with skinny Steve.
Yeah.
Like you get to know Steve Rogers before anything else. Carol Danvers, it takes it, it flips it on its head. It has a really cool storytelling structure where it starts you sort of in the middle and then treads backwards.
Yeah, she starts kind of fully formed, but you don't. It's one of those scenes where Carol Danvers is being discovered, not necessarily Captain Marvel.
Right, like Vers is discovering Carol Danvers, which is it's a really cool story structure, and I really enjoyed it. And again, it gets back to there's nothing, and this is a point I made earlier of the in recent years, the solo films have been sort of responsible for introducing things.
Yeah.
So whether it's Wakanda or like the mystic arts or like Spider-Man being Spider-Man or even like Thor introducing Asgard, right? Like all of that stuff bloats these films and sort of you lose the character a little bit, where Black Panther's amazing. I love T'Challa. I think he's great. But the real star of Black Panther is Wakanda as a backdrop and as a setting, and T'Challa is just your catalyst to take you through Wakanda.
He's your guide through it.
Right. He's not. It's the story's not about T'Challa. It's about Wakanda, and then T'Challa's just the one taking you and guiding you through the world, which is cool. It's great, good movie, but it's not really T'Challa's film.
Yeah.
Where this is Carol's film. This like. Iron Man 1 is Tony's film. Steve's film is Captain America. Like these are smaller stories. Like there's no world-ending crisis that's going to happen in Iron Man 1.
Yeah.
There's no okay. There's World War II, which is the story of Captain America, right? Like
yeah.
There's no like okay, it's World War II, but there's no like the planet's going to be destroyed. Like there's no like Thanos coming down from the space, right? There's nothing huge there going on, where the stories have gotten progressively bigger and bigger. Like fucking Dormammu comes in at the end of fucking Doctor Strange, right? Like it's crazy.
Yeah, it's because I know I still actually have to write my review on Captain America and put it up, but the thing for me has been the fact that I wouldn't necessarily rate Captain Marvel as like the best Marvel film.
No.
But in terms of character introductions, it is up there with Iron Man and Captain America.
Right.
Which isn't a bad place to be.
No.
And I think the problem of the Marvel films is they're so consistent.
Right.
In your expectations and their delivery on those expectations, that you can sit there and walk out and be like, yeah, that was a decent Marvel movie, and it feels like you're kind of underplaying the strengths of the movie.
Right. I don't think it's a perfect film. I think it has a lot of flaws, but I think it's a damn good movie.
Yeah.
And Ben Mendelsohn deserves a fucking medal.
The moment I recognized his voice, I was so... Because I didn't realize he was in it.
Oh, okay.
Until I'm in the theater watching the movie with my sister, and then I hear his voice, and I'm like, oh, yeah. Well, Ben Mendelsohn is... He does speak about his strengths as an actor, just for a moment.
Oh, yeah.
Go from Rogue One to Ready Player One to Captain Marvel, and you see a lot of range in him playing the quote-unquote bad guy. Because, spoiler, if you haven't seen Captain Marvel, he's not actually the bad guy, but he's set up as the bad guy for, I want to say, the first half of the movie. Right. You think he's the bad guy.
Oh, my God. And the turn... So... if you're a comic book fan, you understand that the Kree turn wasn't really a surprise.
The Kree are the bad guys.
Right. Kree are always the bad guys, or almost always the bad guys. And Yon-Rogg is a famous Captain Marvel villain. Minerva is a famous Captain Marvel villain. So having them in the film in the very beginning, you kind of see... It's sort of when you go to see Green Lantern and you're like, oh, Sinestro's a good guy? And you're like expecting the turn to come, right?
Yeah.
I was expecting the turn to come. Obviously, I told you last week, I was spoiled on the twist. I knew the twist was coming. Not that it was a huge surprise. Again, like I understood from being a comic book fan that, hey, they're probably going to be bad guys at some point. I maybe didn't expect it to come in this film.
Yeah, it was like, because like Guardians of the Galaxy, Ronan is Kree.
Right.
So you already had like this backdrop of the Kree are the bad guys, but you also know that with just like me as someone who is familiar with a lot of like the world building behind the Marvel comics, but not necessarily a reader of the Marvel comics, I also know that the Skrull who are also
somewhat a bad guy, right?
Bad guys on a regular basis, to where I was like, well, I guess the Skrull are the bad guys. Maybe the Kree are, maybe Ronan just is rogue. And it's just like, nope.
The thing is that I want to clarify is like, neither the Kree or the Skrulls are bad people. Like, and the film does a great job of explaining and showing that neither side is necessarily inherently bad. But it is the sort of thing of, as humans, we are going to do whatever it takes to better and protect our people. And so we're going to do whatever it takes to, be better ourselves. And so that's all the Skrull and the Kree are doing. If you told a Kree perspective film, they are the good guys. If you told a Skrull perspective film, they are the good guys. And so, yeah, as a third party, you're seeing both sides sort of jockey for positions in this war. Neither of them are necessarily right or wrong in this war. It's just a war.
Yeah.
Which is a little, there's collateral damage with the war. But no, the as soon as the turn happens and you see the Skrull in full comedic form, because they are sort of goofy and weird. The line about "You're my science guy" was the funniest thing I've seen in a long time. That turn got me pretty hard. But yeah, I think it's a special film. I think, again, I'm a little biased, but I was genuinely very, very highly pleased with the film.
Yeah, I think the other thing is it's like we brought it up in the last episode where someone had taken their 2-year-old daughter to see the movie because they wanted, I think similarly, where you want this to be Sam's first movie.
Right, it was an experience.
Well, the idea that, and this is something also with like, say, Rey and Star Wars, is the idea that these young women and young girls can have a character to look up to.
Right.
Who is just as strong and has just as good of a story as Iron Man or Captain America. And that's important.
Right. And I was talking to my dad about this too. My dad has sort of this different thought on it, and he's not wrong. It's we had a Wonder Woman versus Captain Marvel debate of like a better role model for women or for young girls. And my dad's thing was Wonder Woman because she doesn't have a concept of sort of sexualization, or she doesn't have the she grew up on an island where it's not weird to be a woman, and it's not different to be a woman. She's just a person, right? She doesn't have the concept of men versus women and sort of the subjugation of a woman in sort of a modern culture, right? So she doesn't have that. So she kind of goes into the world without any hindrances, where Captain Marvel has all those hindrances and pushes forward anyway and fights. My thing goes down to even down to the look of it, where Captain Marvel wears a suit. She wears what a normal superhero would wear. She doesn't wear a corset and skirt.
Yeah.
Right? To me, it's a little different she is not sexualized in any way. Where in Wonder Woman, especially in the early comics, that it's like bondage and sexualization is a huge part
of a big deal of Wonder Woman.
Wonder Woman comics. So, again, you can go either way. I'm not saying either one is better or worse, but to me, Captain Marvel is sort of the role model that I would show my daughter.
I think my thing would just be like, shouldn't we just be happy that there's two?
Oh, absolutely. The fact that we can have this debate
exactly.
is the best part about it.
It's a good thing that we're in this situation.
Totally agree. So I mean, curious because we talked about it last week. So for me coming at this as a Carol Danvers fan, it's the movie that I wanted. For you coming at as someone that didn't know Carol Danvers as a character, what do you think of the characterization of her character and how she fits within all this?
I think for one of the things I liked about Carol Danvers is just like you get her
she's spunky.
Spunk right away, and it's just like, I like this person. Like, and that's kind of just how I felt like while watching. I'm like, man, I really like this person.
Yeah.
Like she's not willing to just accept the status quo,
right? And
just be like, no, I'm gonna tell the joke even though you don't like it.
Yeah.
And so I liked her spunky attitude. I like just as you learn more about Carol Danvers when she still veers.
Yeah.
Just like what she had to overcome to get to where she was, like the strength of a person before she ever got her powers.
Right.
It's just, she was just great.
Right.
Type thing. And so it was a nice introduction to have a character, and then you realize, oh God, this person already in one movie has like Thor level power.
Oh yeah.
It's just like, ooh. Like there is also like the looking forward with Endgame, it's like excited to realize, knowing how Thor almost took out Thanos, it's like
now you have two
of them.
Right. So actually, it was kind of interesting too. There's a rumor that Marvel's sort of built the MCU around what they call the Trinity, which has been. So I mean, obviously, every company sort of has a Trinity. So the Trinity of DC has been Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman for decades now. And the Trinity for the MCU, and Feige's talked about it, it has been Captain America, Iron Man, and Thor. With them getting older and sort of moving away from them, the new Trinity, the rumor is that they're building around Black Panther, Doctor Strange, and Captain Marvel. And so there's a lot of parallel between Strange and Tony Stark in terms of personality and sort of being that cocky, intelligent asshole. There's the T'Challa and Steve Rogers thing of being the duty, the leader, the moral compass, and then Captain Marvel and Thor of just being the powerful battering ram with some comedic elements thrown in, but just like the battering ram that you use, right? So I mean, it's awesome. I think it's gonna be great.
No, I loved in the trailer for Endgame that came out where
he tries to intimidate her.
And she just doesn't even flinch, but just smirks.
Yeah,
and he's like, "I like this one."
Yeah, it's great. I'm super excited.
So anyway, that's Captain Marvel. If you haven't seen it, go see it. Let's end this though on your Marvel rankings, and of course, I thought I had included in my note the image itself, and I hadn't.
I have the
but
image.
I did give it to James. So James, why don't you go ahead and real quick, can you throw that up on screen? So Chris, why don't you break it down for everyone?
Okay, cool. So I have them S through F tier. The tiers sort of recognize the like there's a clear break between the tiers. So like all the S tier films are clearly a step above the A tier films, and et cetera, as you go down the list. I have them in order from left to right as well in terms of how I rank them. So this also works as a clear ranking as well, other than just a tier list. Again, a lot of them within the tiers, I think they're pretty close. But when the tier break happens, I think that there's a clear divide. The closest tiers are the S and A tier. I think any of those films could be argued for higher or lower in my mind. But again, I think they're pretty clearly defined within the tiers. I think there's larger jumps between A and B and C and as you go down the list. So just going through it really quick, S tier is going to be Captain America, Winter Soldier, Infinity War, and Civil War. A tier, I have Captain Marvel, the original Guardians of the Galaxy, the original Iron Man, and then Thor Ragnarok. B tier, I have Spider-Man Homecoming, Black Panther, the original Avengers, Doctor Strange. C tier, I have Guardians of the Galaxy 2, Avengers Age of Ultron, the original Captain America, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Ant-Man, Thor. D tier, I have Iron Man's 2 and 3, and the Hulk, and then F tier, I have Thor: The Dark World, because that belongs in
I'm surprised that Incredible Hulk isn't also on the F tier.
I actually think that movie does a great job of explaining, or exploring kind of Hulk as a sympathetic figure.
Yeah, it does do, I would say that, but there are just a lot of choices in that movie that are just bad.
Oh, yeah.
Like, just all around
But I think,
bad.
like, there's nuggets in there that make it a good film and that make it interesting to watch. Like, Edward Norton, as much as people shit talk Edward Norton is brilliant in that movie.
Edward Norton is just one of those actors who's, like... When he actually gives a shit about a role.
Yeah, I mean...
Even when he doesn't give a shit about a role, he's still pretty entertaining to watch.
Edward Norton in The Hulk, I think he... Honestly, if I love Mark Ruffalo, but I think Edward Norton is the better Hulk. Or he played the better Bruce Banner. But... As a kind of sympathetic character, but again, just didn't work. A lot of the film didn't work. But again, I think there's a lot of elements in there that did. So it belongs ahead of Thor, which I don't think anything in Thor worked.
No, the thing I liked when you first shared this is I'm not the biggest fan of ranking.
Right.
Because
neither am I. It's
super subjective, and sometimes what I think one day is going to be different the next. Like I often say when it comes to Star Wars that depending on my mood, Return of the Jedi and Revenge of the Sith often get swapped around. But it's to where I'd rather not like rank them, but I like this idea, even though you can say, oh yeah, it is like left to right in ranking mode.
Right.
I like the idea of being like, oh no, this is obviously the best of the best tier, the A tier, the B tier. I like this setup. And when I was looking over that, I was basically just like, I don't really have any arguments. Like I can buy each film being where it's ranked.
Right.
The only one that I might have moved up is the first Avengers. Maybe not to A tier, but like higher in the B tier.
Sure. I would agree with that.
Other than that, I like looked at this and I was like, no, I actually agree with everything here. Mm-hmm. So it's...
Again, I think within the tiers, they're all pretty shuffleable.
Which is what I like about it.
Right. But again, within the tiers, I think there's clear definitive... between the tiers, I think there's a clear definitive line in the sand between all of these. I think the C tier is the one that was where it starts to get sort of wonky.
Yeah.
Like I think that you could easily put both Ant-Man's and Thor down a tier, and I wouldn't really bat an eye. But again, I think they're clearly better than both Iron Man and the Hulk. So
yeah. No, I think it was... I saw this and I was like, I like this idea of a ranking. Right. And you even created a...
Yeah, a tier maker is a online site where you can make tier lists like this. So it makes it... I made this one in Photoshop, but tier maker makes it very easy to just kind of drag and drop. So I made one using all these same assets that I have here. So you can go ahead and make that if you want. I think we'll put a link in there.
We'll put a link in the show notes. And James, I think it's in the note. I don't know if you can, but it's the very bottom link, the tier maker one. You can also, if you can, throw that in the comments. So that way, if you, the viewer, want to make your own, you can always make one and you can share it with us, and we'll do something with them, I guess, maybe. But yeah, no, I think it was, I saw it and I was immediately like, oh, I like this. This is something that I might think we might want to maybe even do with Star Wars at some point.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I only did it with Marvel because there are so many.
Yeah.
That it made it easier to kind of wrap my brain around visually looking at it. So like when you look at a list, it makes it very hard to sort of see
parody.
Right.
Because you want to say, oh, this is the 10th best film in a series of 20.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to be like, oh, it must be average. Well, it could still be average, or it could still be on the higher up tier if you have a lot of good films.
Right.
So, yeah.
And again, the fact that like this is very top heavy speaks to the MCU. I think that, again,
exactly.
By normal film standards, I don't think Thor: The Dark World is a terrible movie. But I think in
if like we did a similar list for DC, I don't think we'd have very much above C.
Right.
Then again, I still need to watch. Well, still should watch Aquaman, but
I've heard good things about Shazam so far.
Shazam looks interesting.
Yeah, he's an interesting character to begin with.
So I'm kind of interested in it, but it's still also, again, not having seen Aquaman, which for a lot of people I know kind of made DC a little more palatable. I'm still like living in the world where the last one I saw was Justice League. So, anyway, that's it for the show notes. Is there anything else you feel like bringing up, Chris?
I'm good.
All right, in that case, James, let's roll credits. If you like what you saw, please like, share, subscribe, do all the fancy things. If you're watching it on YouTube, also click that annoying little bell because YouTube has to share it to you in 14 different ways, none of them that make sense. You can also find us online on Facebook, Twitter, and Facebook, Twitter, and of course, Twitch. All links in the little credits, and on our website, our upcoming broadcast will be not next Sunday, but the Sunday after, which I think is the 7th.
Yes. Wait.
Either way, it's going to be, if you actually stay through after James does a little end credit swipe, it actually will have our upcoming schedule.
Yeah, it's the 7th.
Oh, so yeah, our next episode is going to be April 7th, but until then, you all be fantastic people, and have a good one.